The rain hammered against the metal walls of the research station like bullets from the sky. Dr. James Rodriguez pulled his jacket tighter and checked the weather scanner one more time. The red warning lights blinked angrily at him. This wasn't just any storm. This was the kind of weather that could tear buildings apart. He'd been alone on the planet Kepler 442c for 3 weeks now, collecting samples and studying the strange plant life. The job was supposed to be routine. Get in, do. The research, get out. But the weather had other plans. All communication with Earth was down, and his transport ship couldn't land in this chaos. The wind outside sounded like a monster trying to break in. James double-checked all the emergency seals on his shelter. This small dome was all that stood between him and the storm. He'd built it according to protocol, but he'd never tested it against weather like this. Lightning split the sky every few seconds, turning everything white for a moment before plunging it back into darkness. But these weren't normal lightning strikes. His energy scanner was going crazy, showing readings he'd never seen before. The electricity in the air was so thick, he could feel it making his hair stand up. "What the heck is going on out there?" he muttered to himself, watching the scanner's screen fill with impossible numbers. James had always been the curious type. Even as a kid, he was the one taking apart radios to see how they worked, much to his mother's frustration. That curiosity had led him to become one of Earth's top researchers in alien biology. He'd studied life forms on 12 different planets, but he'd never seen energy readings like this. The scanner suddenly went silent. All the red lights turned green at once. James frowned and tapped the screen. The device was working, but according to its readings, the storm had just stopped. But he could still hear the wind and rain outside. "That's not possible," he said, checking the device's connections. Everything looked normal. Then he heard something that made his blood freeze, a soft tapping sound, like someone knocking on the shelter's door. But that was impossible. Nothing could survive out there in this storm. James grabbed his portable scanner and pointed it toward the door. There was definitely something out there. Something big enough to be human, but the scanner couldn't identify what it was. The energy signature was all wrong, like nothing in Earth's databases. The tapping came again, weaker this time. James's training told him not to open the door. Protocol was clear about contact with unknown life forms, but his human instincts told him something different. Whatever was out there sounded hurt. He grabbed his emergency medical kit and moved toward the door. His hand shook slightly as he reached for the controls. "This is probably the dumbest thing I've ever done," he whispered. The door slid open, and a blast of cold, electrically charged air hit him in the face. Through the swirling rain and wind, he saw a figure collapsed just outside his shelter. At first glance, it looked human. 2 arms, 2 legs, about his height. But something was off. The figure's skin seemed to glow faintly, even in the darkness. And the clothes, if they were clothes, looked like they were made of some kind of living material that shifted and moved on its own. James didn't hesitate. He grabbed the figure under the arms and dragged them inside, quickly sealing the door behind him. The shelter's warmth immediately began to chase away the cold, but James barely noticed. He was too busy staring at what he'd just brought inside. It was definitely not human. The being was unconscious, breathing slowly and steadily. The faint glow James had noticed outside was stronger now, soft blue and silver patterns that ran along the skin like glowing tattoos. They pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat. The face was the most shocking part. It was beautiful in a way that made James's brain struggle to process what he was seeing. The features were familiar enough to be human. 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, but perfect in a way that no human ever was. The skin looked soft and smooth, without a single flaw. The hair was long and seemed to change color slightly in different light, shifting between silver and deep blue. "Okay, James," he said to himself, forcing his scientific mind to take over. "First contact protocol. Step 1, Make sure they're not dying. He knelt beside the being and checked for injuries. There was a long cut along one arm that looked like it came from flying debris. The wound was bleeding, but the blood was a strange silver color that seemed to sparkle slightly. James opened his medical kit and started cleaning the wound. The moment his skin touched the being's arm, something incredible happened. For just a second, he felt something. Like a whisper in his mind, full of fear and gratitude and something else he couldn't identify. He jerked his hand back, heart pounding. What was that? The being's eyes fluttered open. James found himself staring into the most beautiful eyes he'd ever seen. They were violet, but not just any violet. They seemed to have depth, like looking into a deep pool of colored water. And they were looking right at him, with an intelligence that was clearly not human. For a long moment, neither of them moved. James felt like he was frozen in place, caught between wonder and fear. This was first contact, the moment humanity had been dreaming about and preparing for. And it was happening in his tiny shelter during the worst storm he'd ever seen. The Sparp being slowly sat up, never taking those incredible eyes off his face. When they spoke, their voice was like music, soft and melodic in a way that made James's heart skip a beat. "Thank you," they said in perfect English, though their accent was like nothing James had ever heard. "I was not sure I would survive the storm." James's mouth fell open. You speak English?" A small smile crossed the being's face, and James felt his cheeks grow warm. That smile was devastating. "I have been listening to your people's communications for some time," they said. "Your language is quite beautiful, though complex. I am still learning." "Learning," James managed to say. "How long have you been listening?" The being's skin patterns pulsed a little brighter, and James realized it might be a sign of emotion, like blushing, but with light instead of color. "Long enough to know that you, James Rodriguez, are different from the others of your kind," they said softly. James felt his world tilt. They knew his name. They'd been watching him. The implications hit him like a truck, but before he could process them fully, the beings swayed slightly, still weak from their injuries. "Hey, careful," James said, reaching out to steady them. The moment his hand touched their shoulder, he felt that strange mental whisper again. Stronger this time. Images flashed through his mind. A ship caught in the storm, systems failing, a desperate crash landing. The being noticed his reaction and looked concerned. "I apologize. I did not mean to share my thoughts. Your people are not accustomed to mental contact, are you?" "Mental contact?" James repeated, feeling like his understanding of the universe had just been turned upside down. "Yes. It is how my people communicate when words are not enough. But I can see it disturbs you. I will be more careful." James looked into those amazing violet eyes and realized that everything he thought he knew about life in the universe had just changed. And despite the fear and confusion, he found himself more excited than he'd ever been in his life. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside the tiny shelter, two beings from different worlds sat looking at each other, both knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. The next morning brought an eerie silence. The storm had finally passed, leaving behind a world that looked completely different. James woke up on his small cot and immediately looked toward where his unexpected guest had been resting. The being was sitting cross-legged near the shelter's window, watching the sunrise with those incredible violet eyes. In the morning light, they looked even more amazing than before. Their skin had a natural glow that seemed to capture and reflect the sunlight. The patterns he'd noticed the night before were still there, but fainter now, like they responded to the being's emotional state. "Good morning, James Rodriguez," the being said without turning around. Their voice still had that musical quality that made his heart do strange things. "Just James is fine," he said, sitting up and running a hand through his messy hair. "And you are?" The being turned to face him, and James saw something like amusement in those alien features. "My name is—" They paused, then made a sound that was part whistle, part singing, and completely impossible for human vocal cords to reproduce. "But I understand that might be difficult for you. Your people would probably call me Zara." James nodded, grateful for something he could actually pronounce. "Zara, it's a beautiful name." Those skin patterns pulsed a little brighter, and James was starting to understand it really was like blushing. "Thank you. I chose it after listening to your music broadcasts. I find human names quite lovely." "You've been listening to our music?" James asked, genuinely curious. As a scientist, he'd always wondered what aliens might think of human culture. Zara's expression brightened noticeably. "Oh yes, your species creates such wonderful sounds. I particularly enjoy what you call classical music and something called jazz. The emotional complexity is fascinating." James couldn't help but smile. "You like jazz? That's not what I expected to hear from an alien visitor." "Is that wrong?" Zara asked, looking worried. "I do not wish to offend your cultural preferences." No, James said quickly. "It's not wrong at all. It's just, well, jazz is pretty uniquely human. The fact that you appreciate it says something interesting about your species." Zara tilted their head in a gesture that was surprisingly human-like. "What does it say?" James thought for a moment. "Jazz is all about improvisation, about taking something structured and making it personal. It's messy and beautiful and emotional, all at the same time. If you can appreciate that, then maybe our species aren't so different after all." The patterns on Zara's skin pulsed in what James was beginning to recognize as pleasure or happiness. "I had hoped you would say something like that." "Hoped?" James asked. "Why?" Zara was quiet for a long moment, then stood up and moved closer to where James was sitting. "May I show you something? It requires touch, but I promise I will be gentle." "With your mind." James felt his pulse quicken. The mental contact from the night before had been strange, but not unpleasant. More like sharing a feeling than having his thoughts invaded. "Okay, but go slow. I'm still getting used to this whole telepathy thing." Zara knelt beside him and slowly reached out to place their hand on his arm. The moment their skin touched, James felt it again, that whisper in his mind. But this time, instead of just emotions, he saw images. A beautiful blue-green planet with crystal cities that seemed to grow from the ground like plants. Beings like Zara moving through spaces filled with living architecture that pulsed with the same gentle light as their skin. Music everywhere, not heard, but felt through the connection all beings shared with each other. "Your world," James whispered, awed by the beauty of what he was seeing. "Yes," Zara said softly. "We call it Luminahai, which means Song of Light in your language. We are a peaceful people, James. We have no wars, no violence. We live in harmony with our world and each other." The images shifted, showing massive ships traveling between stars. But these weren't the cold metal vessels James had always imagined. They looked alive, like enormous creatures swimming through space. "We explore," Zara continued. "We seek out new life, new forms of consciousness. We have found many species across the galaxy, and we learn from all of them. And now you've found us," James said. The images changed again, and James saw himself, but not as he knew himself. This was how Zara saw him, working alone in his lab, carefully studying samples, treating even the smallest life forms with respect and curiosity. He looked noble, somehow. Important. "We have been watching your species for some time," Zara said. Most races we encounter are either too primitive for meaningful contact or too aggressive for safe approach. But humans are different. Different how? Zara's grip on his arm tightened slightly, and the emotions coming through the connection became stronger. You have something we rarely see. You are curious without being destructive. You can be violent when threatened, but you also show incredible compassion. You create art and music and stories. You dream of the stars and actually work to reach them. James felt overwhelmed by the intensity of what Zara was sharing. But why me specifically? You said last night that I'm different from other humans. The patterns on Zara's skin began pulsing faster, and James sensed embarrassment mixed with something else. Something deeper. I was not supposed to make contact, Zara admitted. I was only supposed to observe and report back to my people. But I have been watching you for 3 months, James. I have seen how you work, how you treat the life forms you study, how you talk to yourself when you think no one is listening. James felt his cheeks grow warm. You've been watching me for 3 months? I have watched many humans, Zara said quickly. But you are special. When you discovered that new flower species last week, you spent an entire day making sure you could study it without harming its ecosystem. Most beings would simply take what they wanted. The memory came flooding back. James had found a beautiful flowering plant that seemed to glow with its own internal light. Instead of just collecting samples, he'd spent hours figuring out how to study it without disturbing the complex network of other organisms that depended on it. That was just good science, James said. No, Zara said firmly. That was compassion. That was wisdom. That was why I had to meet you. The mental connection between them suddenly carried a new emotion, one that made James's breath catch in his throat. It was attraction, pure and simple, but mixed with something deeper. Respect, admiration, and a longing that seemed to go beyond physical interest. Zara, James said softly, are you saying what I think you're saying? The glow patterns on Zara's skin pulsed brighter than ever. In my culture, we have a concept called resonance bonding. It is when two consciousness connect on a level deeper than simple communication. It is rare even between members of our own species. Between different species, it is almost unheard of. James felt like his world was spinning. And you think we have this resonance? I know we do, Zara said. I felt it the moment I touched you last night. Did you not feel it too? That sense of recognition, like meeting someone you had known all your life? James thought back to that moment when Zara had first opened those violet eyes and looked at him. There had been something, a feeling like coming home, like finding something he hadn't even known he was looking for. I felt something, he admitted, but I thought it was just the shock of meeting an alien. Zara smiled and James felt his heart skip a beat. James Rodriguez, I have traveled across the galaxy and met beings you cannot even imagine, but I have never felt with anyone what I feel with you. Outside the shelter, the alien sun was climbing higher in the sky, promising a beautiful day. But inside, James felt like his entire understanding of the universe had just shifted again. He was looking into the eyes of someone from another world, someone who had apparently been drawn to him across the vast emptiness of space. And despite everything his rational mind was telling him about the impossibility of it all, he was starting to realize he felt the same way. The days that followed felt like living in a dream James never wanted to wake up from. With the storm gone, he should have been preparing to leave the planet, but his communication equipment had been damaged. At least that's what he told himself, as he made only half-hearted attempts to fix it. The truth was, he didn't want to leave, not yet. Zara had insisted on helping him with his research while they waited for the repairs. Watching her work was like watching magic happen. She could touch a plant and immediately understand its entire biological structure. When she showed James what she was seeing through their mental connection, It was like viewing life itself from the inside out. "Your people call this a simple moss," Zara said, kneeling beside a patch of blue-green growth near the shelter. "But it is not simple at all. Look." She placed her hand on James's arm, and suddenly he could see what she saw. The moss wasn't just growing randomly. It was part of a vast network that connected every plant on the planet. They were all talking to each other, sharing nutrients and information in ways human science had never imagined. "That's incredible," James breathed. "We had no idea." "Your people see individual things," Zara explained. "We see connections. Both ways of understanding have value." James found himself constantly amazed by how Zara looked at the world. Where he saw separate organisms competing for resources, she saw cooperation and communication. It was changing how he thought about everything, but it wasn't just the science that fascinated him. It was Zara herself. She had an endless curiosity about human culture that matched his curiosity about alien life. She wanted to know about everything: why humans made music, why they told stories, why they decorated their homes with pictures of things that weren't even there. "I don't understand art," she admitted one evening as they sat watching the alien sunset. James had shown her photos from his personal collection, paintings and sculptures from Earth that he'd brought to remind him of home. "What don't you understand about it?" James asked. "Why do humans create images of things that do not exist? This painting shows a landscape, but it is not any real place. Why not simply look at actual landscapes?" James thought about how to explain it. Because the painting isn't really about the landscape. It's about how the artist felt when they saw a landscape. It's about sharing an emotion, a moment, a way of seeing the world. Zara was quiet for a long moment. "You mean it is like our mental sharing, but using colors and shapes instead of direct thought?" "Exactly," James said, excited that she was starting to understand. "Art is how we share our inner experiences with each other, even when we can't touch minds the way your people do." The patterns on Zara's skin pulsed thoughtfully. "So when you look at this painting, you feel what the artist felt?" "Something like that, yeah." Zara reached over and took the photo from his hands. As their fingers brushed, James felt that now familiar tingle of mental contact. But this time, instead of sharing her thoughts, Zara was trying to experience the painting the way a human would. "Oh," she said softly, her skin pattern suddenly glowing brighter. "Oh, I see. It is beautiful. Not the image itself, but the longing in it. The artist missed their home." "How did you know that?" James asked, impressed. "I can feel it now. The way you feel it. The sadness and love mixed together." Zara looked at him with those amazing violet eyes. "Is this what you feel when you look at pictures of Earth?" James felt his throat tighten unexpectedly. He hadn't realized how homesick he'd been until that moment. "Yeah, sometimes." "I understand now why humans need art," Zara said gently. "It must be lonely, not being able to share thoughts and feelings directly." "It can be," James admitted. "But it also makes the connections we do make more special, I think. We have to work harder for understanding." Zara studied his face intently. "Is that why what we have is so unusual? Because your people rarely connect the way we do?" James felt his heart start beating faster. "Maybe. I've never felt anything like this before, Zara. This connection we have. It's changing everything for me." The glow patterns on her skin began pulsing in a rhythm that reminded James of a heartbeat. "For me as well. My people would find this very strange." "Strange how?" "We are taught that deep connections can only form between those who share the same biological and mental patterns. But with you..." Zara hesitated, then reached out to touch his hand. "With you, The connection is stronger than anything I have ever experienced, even with my own kind. James felt a wave of emotion through their link, affection mixed with wonder, and something that might have been love. It was overwhelming and beautiful and terrifying all at once. "Zara," he said softly, "what happens when your people come looking for you?" The question had been weighing on his mind for days. Zara was obviously important, some kind of scout or researcher. Eventually, someone would notice she was missing. Zara's skin patterns dimmed slightly. "I do not know. My mission was supposed to be simple: observe human activity and report back. I was never supposed to make contact. And now? Now everything is complicated." She looked out at the alien landscape surrounding them. "My people believe that emotional attachments to other species are dangerous. They think such feelings cloud judgment and lead to poor decisions." James felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. "Do they forbid relationships between species?" "Not forbid, exactly, but they discourage them strongly. Those who form such attachments are usually reassigned to distant sectors where they cannot maintain contact. So if they find out about us, I would be sent away," Zara said quietly. "Probably to the Outer Rim, where I would spend decades studying gas giants and dead worlds." James felt his stomach drop. The idea of losing Zara, of never seeing those violet eyes again, was more painful than he would have thought possible after knowing her for such a short time. "Then we won't let them find out," he said firmly. Zara turned to look at him, surprise clear in her expression. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe there's another way. Maybe we don't have to choose between your mission and this." He gestured. "Between them." "James, what are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that maybe it's time for official first contact between our species. Maybe instead of hiding what we have, we use it to build something bigger." Zara's skin patterns began pulsing rapidly, excitement mixed with fear. "That would be incredibly dangerous. If either of our peoples reacted badly, then we make sure they don't," James said. "You said yourself that humans are different from other species you've encountered. And you're living proof that your people aren't the cold, logical beings your government seems to think they are." James took her hands in his, feeling the warm tingle of their mental connection. "Zara, what if we're not just two individuals who happen to find each other? What if we're supposed to be the bridge between our worlds?" The patterns on her skin grew brighter as she considered his words. Through their connection, James could feel her weighing possibilities, her brilliant mind working through scenarios and outcomes. "It would be the greatest risk either of our species has ever taken," she said finally. "But also the greatest opportunity," James replied. "And besides, the best things in life usually involve some risk." Zara smiled then, that devastating smile that made his heart forget how to beat properly. "You truly are unlike any being I have ever met, James Rodriguez." As the alien stars began appearing in the darkening sky, James realized that his quiet research mission had become something he never could have imagined. He was no longer just a scientist studying alien life. He was potentially the first human ambassador to the galaxy, and he was falling in love with his alien counterpart. Everything changed on the fourth day. James woke up to the sound of his emergency communicator crackling to life for the first time since the storm. The voice that came through was tense and urgent. "Dr. Rodriguez, this is Commander Chen from Earth Defense Station Alpha. Please respond immediately." James felt his stomach drop as he looked over at Zara, who had gone completely still. Her skin patterns were pulsing in rapid, nervous flashes. "James," she whispered, "I am detecting multiple ships approaching this system. Both human and Confederation vessels." "What?" James grabbed his scanner and saw what she meant. The space around the planet was suddenly full of activity. Ships were arriving from two different directions, and they weren't flying in friendly formations. He keyed the communicator with shaking hands. "Commander Chen, this is Rodriguez. I'm here." "Thank God," came the reply. "We've been trying to reach." You for hours. We have a situation developing up here. Long-range sensors have detected an alien fleet heading toward your position. We're moving to intercept, but you need to get to your emergency bunker immediately. James felt his world tilting. Commander, wait! The aliens might not be hostile, they could be— Dr. Rodriguez, you are not qualified to make that assessment. Get to your bunker now. That's a direct order. The communication cut off, leaving. James staring at the dead device. He looked at Zara, whose beautiful features were tight with worry. They think your people are invading, he said. And my people probably think I have been captured or killed, Zara replied. James, this is very bad. If our fleets meet in hostile positions, there could be a war, James finished. The thought made him feel sick. Two advanced civilizations, clashing because neither understood what was really happening. Zara suddenly pressed her hand to her temple, her eyes closing tightly. I am receiving a communication from my ship. Captain Thymel is demanding immediate response. Can you talk to them? Explain what's happening? I can try. Zara's skin patterns began glowing more intensely as she focused. James could feel the mental effort she was making through their connection. After a few moments, she opened her eyes, looking troubled. Captain Thymel is not pleased. When I did not report in after the storm, they assumed the worst. They have requested backup and are preparing defensive positions. Defensive positions against what? Against humans, Zara said quietly. James, my people have been watching your species expand across the galaxy. Some of them are concerned about human military capabilities. James felt a chill. They're afraid of us? Not afraid exactly, but cautious. Humans expand quickly and often claim territory aggressively. My mission was partly to assess whether your species represents a threat to Confederation worlds. The weight of the situation was starting to hit James. And now they think you've been captured by the very species you were supposed to be evaluating. Yes. And your people think my rescue fleet is an invasion force. James ran his hands through his hair, trying to think. Through the shelter's window, he could see lights moving across the sky, ships taking positions for what could become the first interstellar war in human history. We have to do something, he said. We're the only ones who know the truth. But what can we do? I am one scout, and you are one researcher. Our governments are not going to listen to us now that they are in combat posture. James grabbed his communication equipment. Maybe they won't listen to us separately, but what if we go to them together? Zara looked at him with those violet eyes wide with surprise. James, that would be incredibly dangerous. If either side sees us together, they might assume the worst. Or they might realize that we're proof that our species can coexist peacefully. And if they don't, if they think you are being controlled or I am a prisoner, James thought about that. The risk was enormous. If this went wrong, it could make the situation much worse. But if they did nothing, two civilizations might destroy each other based on a misunderstanding. Zara, you said your people believe emotional attachments to other species' cloud judgment. Maybe they're wrong. Maybe what we have, this connection, is exactly what both our peoples need to understand each other. The patterns on her skin pulsed rapidly as she considered his words. You are asking me to risk not just my career, but potentially the safety of both our species. I'm asking you to trust that what we've found together is stronger than fear and misunderstanding. Zara was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and took his hands. Through their mental link, James felt her resolve strengthening. My people have a saying, she said. Sometimes the greatest wisdom comes from the heart, not the mind. Is that a yes? That is a yes. She squeezed his hands. But we must be very careful about how we approach this. James felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with terror. What do you suggest? We contact both fleets simultaneously. We announce ourselves as a joint diplomatic team. We make it clear that We are working together voluntarily. And if they start shooting anyway? Zara's skin patterns took on a determined glow. Then we prove that love is stronger than fear by refusing to let go of each other no matter what happens. James felt his heart swell with an emotion so strong it almost knocked him over. This incredible being was willing to risk everything for what they had found together. "Zara," he said softly, "I think I'm falling in love with you." Her skin blazed with light, more beautiful than anything James had ever seen. "James Rodriguez, I know I am falling in love with you." Outside, the ships continued their deadly dance, in the sky. But inside the shelter, two beings from different worlds held each other close and prepared to either save their civilizations or die trying. James activated his emergency beacon while Zara prepared to send a message to her fleet. In a few minutes, they would announce to the galaxy that a human and a Confederation citizen had formed a bond that could bridge the gap between species. It was either the bravest thing they had ever done or the most foolish. James was beginning to think there might not be much difference between the two. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready," Zara replied, and together they sent out a message that would change the course of galactic history. "This is a joint communication from Dr. James Rodriguez of Earth and Scout Zara Lynn of the Confederation. We are requesting immediate diplomatic contact with both fleets. We have important information that could prevent unnecessary conflict between our peoples." Now all they could do was wait and hope that love really could conquer fear. The silence after their transmission felt like it lasted forever. James and Zara sat in the shelter, hands clasped tightly together, watching the lights of both fleets through the window. For 10 agonizing minutes, nothing happened. Then James's communicator exploded with activity. "Rodriguez! What the hell do you think you're doing?" Commander Chen's voice was furious. "Are you being held against your will? Give us your status immediately!" At the same time, Zara pressed her hand to her temple as mental communications from her ship flooded in. James could feel the chaos through their connection, confusion, anger, and fear from both sides. "This is not going well," Zara said, wincing, from the intensity of the mental voices. "James," Commander Chen's voice was getting more frantic, "if you are under duress, say the word protocol, and we will begin immediate rescue operations." James took a deep breath and keyed the communicator. "Commander Chen, I am not under duress. I repeat, I am not being held against my will. The Confederation Scout is here voluntarily, and we need to arrange immediate diplomatic talks between both fleets." "Impossible. We don't negotiate with potential invaders." "Commander, they're not invaders." James's voice rose in frustration. "Scout Zara has been observing our colonies for months as part of a peaceful research mission. Her ship was damaged in the storm. This is all a misunderstanding." There was a long pause. "Dr. Rodriguez, how do you know this being's name and mission details?" James looked at Zara, who nodded encouragingly. "Because we've been communicating, sir. Her species has telepathic abilities, and we've established a connection that allows us to share thoughts and verify each other's intentions." "Telepathic? Rodriguez, you could be under some form of mental control." "Sir, with respect, I'm a xenobiologist. I know the difference between mental influence and genuine communication. What Zara and I have is real understanding, not control." Meanwhile, Zara was having her own difficult conversation with Captain Tymel. James could feel her frustration growing as she tried to explain the situation to her superior. "Captain Tymel believes you have somehow compromised my judgment," she told James. "He is demanding that I return to the ship immediately for medical evaluation." Medical evaluation? They think exposure to human thought patterns may have damaged my mental faculties. James felt a surge of anger. "That's ridiculous. You're the sanest person I've ever met, human or alien." Zara's skin patterns pulsed with affection. "Thank you, but my people are very cautious about mental contamination from other species. They have protocols for this situation." "What kind?" Of protocols? The kind that involve isolation chambers and memory adjustment? James felt his blood run cold. They want to erase your memories of me? It is possible. If they determine that my attachment to you is compromising my ability to serve the Confederation. No. James stood up, sudden determination flooding through him. No, that's not happening. We're not letting either side tear apart what we've built. He grabbed his communicator. Commander Chen, I'm requesting immediate transport to your flagship. I want to speak with your commanding officer face-to-face. Rodriguez, that's not possible while we're in a potential combat situation. Then make it possible. James's voice carried an authority he didn't know he possessed. Commander, what I'm about to tell you could prevent a war. Scout Zara and I have discovered something that could revolutionize relations between our species. But I need to explain it to someone with the authority to make decisions. There was another long pause. Stand by, Rodriguez. While they waited, Zara was negotiating with her own people. Captain T-Mel has agreed to allow me to accompany you to the human vessel, but only if I agree to submit to full mental evaluation afterward. Do you agree to that? Zara's expression was resolute. I agree to prove that what we have found is real and beneficial, not harmful. James felt a warm glow of pride. This incredible being was willing to risk everything for what they had discovered. Together, Dr. Rodriguez, Commander Chen's voice crackled over the communicator. Admiral Petrov has agreed to meet with you and the alien representative. You have 1 hour to make your case. Understood. We'll be ready. 30 minutes later, James found himself aboard the human flagship, standing in Admiral Petrov's conference room with Zara beside him. The room was full of senior officers, all looking deeply suspicious of the beautiful alien in their midst. Admiral Petrov was a stern woman in her 50s who looked like she could stare down a black hole. Dr. Rodriguez, you have 1 hour to convince me not to treat this as a hostile first contact situation. Begin. James took a deep breath. Admiral, 3 days ago I made the most important discovery in human history. Not a new planet or a new species, but proof that humans and aliens can form genuine connections that benefit both races. He gestured to Zara. Scout Zara Lin represents the Celestial Confederation, a peaceful alliance of species that has been observing our expansion for months. They're not here to invade or conquer. They're here to evaluate whether humanity is ready for contact with the galactic community. And their conclusion? Admiral Petrov asked coldly. That depends on how we handle this moment, Zara spoke for the first time, her musical voice causing several officers to look surprised. Admiral Petrov, my people have encountered many species in their expansion across the galaxy. Most are either too primitive for meaningful contact or too aggressive for safe relations. And humans? Humans are unique. You have the curiosity to explore the stars and the wisdom to treat other life with respect. But you also have the capacity for violence when threatened. The question my people must answer is which aspect of your nature will dominate in galactic relations. Admiral Petrov studied Zara carefully. And what is your recommendation, Scout? That depends on whether you choose to see me as a threat or an opportunity. James stepped forward. Admiral, what Zara and I have discovered is that our species are compatible on a level no one expected. We can share thoughts, emotions, even understanding. We're proof that humans and Confederation citizens can work together. Dr. Rodriguez, one of the other officers interjected. How do we know you haven't been mentally compromised? Before James could answer, Zara spoke up. May I demonstrate? She looked at Admiral Petrov. With your permission, I would like to share something with Dr. Rodriguez that you can all witness. The Admiral nodded curtly. Zara placed her hand on James's arm, and immediately her skin patterns began glowing softly. James felt the familiar tingle of their mental connection, but this time Zara was sharing something specific, her first impression of the human fleet. Through her eyes, James saw the human ships as she did. They weren't aggressive war machines, but beautiful constructions that spoke of a species brave enough to venture into the unknown. He saw the care with which human crews maintained their vessels, the way they worked together with efficiency and mutual support. "She sees us as explorers, not conquerors," James said aloud, describing what he was experiencing. To her people, the fact that humans travel in groups and watch out for each other is a sign of a mature civilization. Admiral Petrov's expression had changed slightly. "Is that accurate, Scout?" "Yes, Admiral. The way your people handle space travel shows cooperation and long-term thinking. These are qualities my government values highly." The room was quiet for a moment. Then Admiral Petrov spoke again. "Scout Zara Lynn, what would happen if we agreed to formal diplomatic relations between our species? You would be invited to join the Confederation as a junior member. You would have access to technologies and knowledge from dozens of worlds. In return, you would agree to certain protocols regarding expansion and treatment of other species. And if we refuse, then my people would continue to monitor your expansion and make contact again in perhaps 50 years, when your civilization has had more time to mature." James felt the weight of the moment. The future of humanity's place in the galaxy was being decided in this room. "Admiral," he said, "this is what I was talking about. We have a chance to leap forward centuries in our development, all because Zara and I found a way to understand each other." Admiral Petrov was quiet for a long time, studying both of them. Finally, she spoke. "Dr. Rodriguez, Scout Zara Lynn, are you prepared to serve as official liaisons between our species?" James felt his heart jump. "Yes, Admiral." "Yes," Zara agreed, her skin patterns glowing brightly with excitement. "Then let's make history." 6 months later, James stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, the first joint human confederation facility. Through the massive windows, he could see ships from a dozen different species coming and going. Earth had been accepted into the galactic community, and humanity was thriving. Zara appeared beside him, as beautiful as ever. The patterns on her skin had become even more vibrant since they'd started working together officially. "Any regrets?" she asked, slipping her hand into his. James looked out at the vast tapestry of galactic civilization that humanity was now part of. "Only one." "What's that?" He turned to look into those incredible violet eyes. "That it took a storm to bring you to me." Zara's skin blazed with happiness. "James Rodriguez, some of the most beautiful things in the universe are born from chaos." As they stood together watching the ships of 100 worlds, James realized she was absolutely right.